everyone. Welcome to another edition of the Crypto Guardians podcast. Today, I have joining me Jaya Mandava, who is the product lead for Custodial wallets at Gemini. Jaya, thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Cy. Thank you for inviting me here. I'm super excited to be in this podcast and share what I have with you and everyone listening to this podcast.
Well, thank you. We're really excited to have you. This is such a key area to think about for anyone involved in the crypto space is how to store and keep their money and assets, whatever kinds they may be, safe. And so I was delighted that you agreed to speak with us. And I think it's an area that will be of great interest to the entire audience. Just to get us started off, I would love to hear more about how you made your way into crypto.
Yeah, definitely. The complexity behind cryptography and everything that powers cryptocurrencies in general really, got me into this space. I'm very curious and passionate about cryptography in general, all the latest crypto algorithms that are in place, the latest techniques that are used, not just from a security standpoint, but to the additional use cases that core cryptography can strengthen really brought me into the attention of the cryptocurrency world in general. So my background is in security and handling cryptographic key management services prior to joining Gemini. And yeah, that got me interested, got started in the space, and especially wallets specifically, because it goes back to my core principles of security and securing the assets when we are sure and also giving that accessibility, the delicate balance between user accessibility and security and tightening up the ship.
It's a great point. It makes a ton of sense to me that those are things we hold in common between all of our security platforms and our wallets, which is kind of a specific form of security. When you think about kind of making that transition, what's been similar and what's been different for you between the traditional security world and doing it specifically in crypto?
Um, there are a lot of similarities, but also at the same time, a lot of divergence a little bit as well. But in case of security, pure security mindset, it always comes at the tail end of a product development, as in the engineering gets done, the product is ready to release, and then comes the security review as part of a checkbox that we need to select. But when it comes to cryptocurrency, it is the first and foremost thing that everyone is super focused on, to be more secure, to be laser focused on what are the possibilities that can fail when you are really building a secure wallet ecosystem and a secure product. So it is basically day one, and that's how it should be, even in the regular security world as well. So a lot of similarities from a secure development lifecycle standpoint, from all the vulnerability threat vector related at functionalities and so on.
It's a great point. I've seen it too, as folks know, I also come from the traditional security background. And we always see security as the last step in the software development lifecycle, or almost always the case. Whereas, Jay, you're right, it really comes first in crypto. Whenever you see any new currency, any new wallet or custodial product comes out, that is a significant differentiator. So I wonder, what are some of the things that you're able to do now that you weren't able to do before, now that security is really the first thing people think about at the very first step of the software development cycle versus something they're just
Mm-hmm.
tacking on at the end?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Um, well, it goes back to the actual core of what wallet is all about. In a wallet, we are laser focused in storing the keys of cryptocurrency super secure, and also the handling of the key management lifecycle of the currency itself. And as part of this, it's also a delicate balance between accessibility and the security that we give to the users. And it all depends on what functionality we need to tampen down, as in what is the least amount of vectors that we can provide, but with a high level of security involved. Especially in the wallet world, we have very different types of wallets that we can provide, like the hot wallets, which are always online, and cold wallets, which are always offline. And there is a balance between accessibility and the security aspects when it comes to the always online and the always offline. So when it comes to, what is the first thing that we have to do, think differently from having that security first mindset is understanding the core needs of our customers, be it retail customers or the institutions, and giving that delicate balance and having that balance between accessibility and security in a very to use, easy to use mindset, but also, yeah, providing secure, accessible functionality.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. And you mentioned the difference between kind of your basic consumer wallets as well as institutional. So I thought this could be a good chance for you to tell our audience a little bit about, what is a crypto wallet? What are different types of wallets that are available out there, and how do you kind of think about that spectrum? Because I know, even for me, even me looking at kind of the different options, there's seems like a new wallet popping up every day, whether it be from an
Mhm.
institution or for me as a consumer, and I never know which one to pick or how to use different wallets for different use cases.
Yeah, that's a great question, Sai. It all depends on what is the core need of you as a person. Like even in the regular world, an average person in the industry or even generally have a balance of like 15 to 17 passwords or 15 to 20 passwords they tackle day in and day out, right? Be it in the workspace or in the regular personal space. So when it comes to wallets, it depends on how you want to store the crypto, what type of currencies you want to store, and it depends on what functionality you want to do with your cryptocurrency. Are you just buying just for the sake of buying and storing it for a future need, or are you here to actively trade and use trading functionality, or you are here to actually do a lot of send receives, like between different wallets that you have in different other ecosystem of the industry. So it all depends on the use cases that you have as a user. And generally industry is looking into like the custodial wallets and the non-custodial wallets. And the way they kind of typically nail down or roll down is always online wallets, which are like typically always connected to the internet, always fast access to your funds, super high response. But at the same time, you need to think about what are the security vectors in an always online system that you need to think about, how security is. It always goes back to that balance of faster accessibility and the security mindset for always online. And there are other wallet types like the cold wallets, which are always offline, stored in the data centers, or stored in a paper wallet or in a hardware wallet that you can have with a USB stick and so on. They are super secure, as in you only connect only when you need them to be connected, especially the hardware wallets and the paper wallet side of stuff. But they, again, going back to that accessibility and the security part, you need to know, when you need to connect your, hardware wallets or the offline stuff when you need it. And because the market is very fluctuating, very dynamic in nature, it all goes back to, did you catch the ride or did you miss the wave, kind of thing. So, accessibility of pulling in your funds from a cold wallet is very much focused on how well timed you are, and also how knowledgeable you are in connecting to different other like centralized exchanges or the DeFi ecosystem, or even using your browser dApps, like the Chrome extensions or the Firefox extensions that you have to store your keys. It all goes back to accessibility and security of how well you are storing your keys, and yeah, how accessible you have with the ecosystem.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And we've seen a greater innovation in the space over time, where I think when it started, it was largely just offline custodial. I mean, I guess the first really was, the paper wallets. And
Yeah,
for folks who know, that's kind of where you write your seed phrase on a piece of paper and you just store it somewhere so you don't forget it. Maybe if you can memorize it, so that there could be even a paperless version of that. Then we move to kind of,
totally. We still do
yeah,
that, and we still do that, like 12 to 24 words of seed phrases, and then storing up and chunking up the entire paper into different chunks. So we still do that. sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've seen evolutions of that where people are putting it on, embossed metal cards, and there's a whole bunch of different options there. We had the hardware wallets, then we have kind of seen more custodial wallets, and now we're even seeing a mixture of those in NPC wallets. Do you have
Mhm.
any things on kind of what the latest state of the art is in wallets that kind of strike an even more efficient balance between usability and security? And do you see anything kind of
Absolutely.
coming up in the future?
Yeah, absolutely. MPC wallets is the latest and innovative solution that the entire crypto wallet industry is actually ramping up the usage and actively moving all of their systems to follow through. In the MPC wallets, multi-party computation with the shorthand for MPC, it's not just about public-private key pair where you have higher risk of having your private key compromised, meaning compromising your entire asset or entire funds that you own. In the MPC world, you don't have a single private key. You have a key share that can be, sharded into multiple key shares and stored in different geographic locations. So it's not like compromising one key share can compromise your entire asset. So the security that gets involved, when you are having multiple key shares in different geographic locations, exponentially increases the security of your asset itself. So that is one of the key cutting edge innovation that is going on right now. There are a lot of companies out there that already rolled out MPC wallets, and yeah, definitely institutions and retailers are very much looking into leveraging this, especially when the entire industry is echoing to not your keys, not your funds, or not your assets mantra. MPC key shares actually solve that problem. It solves not just about the accessibility and the security aspects, but also giving that secure feeling that you own a key share and you are part of the transactions that go in that handles anything to do with your assets in general. So it gives that secure mindset to the customer at the end of the day, but also, amps up the, security posture of the product itself.
Yeah, that makes sense. And just for folks who are not as familiar with it, I think this concept of sharding a key and having different parties hold keys makes sense. And I think it's common in institutions where you'll have different people in the institution or even multiple institutions share these keys. If you think about how this is implemented for a consumer, how do you typically see this implemented, and what do you think is the safest way for people to kind of store their keys? I know there's, by the way, been famous cases where people used sharded wallets and then kept all the keys on the same server, so kind of defeating the whole purpose
Mhm.
of it. But if I'm a consumer, what do you recommend as best practices for keeping all these keys safe or really using the full power of an MPC sharded key in the right way?
Yeah, that's a great question, actually. It goes back to how you are storing the keys. When it comes to centralized exchanges, you can, there's always an option of having the centralized exchange handle all the key shares on behalf of the customer. And in that case, you are basically reliant on the centralized exchange to have all the top-notch security, governance controls in place on behalf of you to handle your assets. But in that case, you don't really have a key share that you can handle. The other model that you have is where centralized exchanges can give a key share to you, and you can store it in your own key device, maybe on your mobile device or you're on your hardware wallet or anywhere that you can connect to the internet when you have some active crypto transactions that you want to see through. So the best bet over there is to have not just from a key share, holding a key share perspective, but also from a data recovery or a key recovery or a disaster backup recovery purposes standpoint as well. It makes sense to have some key shares in the centralized exchange and a key share where on a device that you own and you can be part of the transactions over there. But in that case, the security angle that you need to think about is how often do I want to be part of the transaction? And am I willing to be part of it, kind of thing. So it goes back to that, delicate balance of accessibility and the willingness of the user to always be there for the transactions. And same goes with the institutions as well, where big institutions want to handle all of the key shares by themselves. That's where the entire spectrum of wallet as a service kind of, ecosystem pops up, where you're, as a custodian, you can give all of the APIs to these institutions who wants to have the entire infrastructure owned by themselves and manage all the key shares from scratch, having all the key management life cycles and the valid infrastructure within their premise, on premise. So again, it goes back to the needs of the customer. There are many different flavors out there that you can leverage, and as a user, it depends on what you want to do with the funds that you have. Kind of ultimately takes the decision call here.
Yeah, I mean, I imagine many of our users, I think, of course, have pure cold storage they never trade. But I think many are trying to find a device, and by that might be the easiest conclusion, where like, yeah, put it in your closet, put it in a safe deposit box, you're kind of done. I think many though are trading on a daily basis. And if you think about folks that are regular traders, maybe not kind of high frequency traders, but regular traders doing daily or weekly transactions, is
Mhm.
there not to get too specific, but is there kind of a division of keys? Like how many different keys would you suggest? Would you suggest like one of those keys is held by an institution, one by a friend? Like what's the optimal setup in kind of thinking about how
Mhm.
someone like that who does want to have regular interactions with their crypto can store their can divide up and store their keys and orchestrate their keys in the most effective way, or maybe just the most common way that you've seen and think works.
Yeah, the common way is the MPC wallets commonly are heavily used by institutions. That's what I have seen in the industry at the moment, not specifically by the direct end users, but you can have end users having a key share on your mobile devices, or have, multiple, a trusted entity, as in having multiple people in that trusted entity be part of your key share mechanism, so that at least, n number of the group or m out of n numbers are present to approve the transactions that needs to go through with the key shares. So you can set up depending on the use case, but most of the ecosystem that we have seen leveraging this MPC stuff is for by institutions, and in there you have multiple different, again, sub needs of the institutions, where there are different departments, different organizations involved with multiple administrators from different organizations. So you have to be very careful around who has access to the key share, and what are the types of security and governance controls that needs to put in on who has access to the key share. Can they use it for what purpose and at what times? And also, there are different needs, as in a cloud heavy institution wants some portion of key shares in some cloud provider, and then there is a whole lot of security concerns that we need to think about: how accessible the key shares are, which data centers, who have access to that entire key share in that cloud provider instance, and so on. So it kind of opens up a lot of security thought process, rigorous controls that we need to think about when we are implementing stuff. So again, going back to your question, many number of solutions can be implemented depending on the needs, but the beauty of MPC tech is that it can be flexible to however the customer wants to customize and however they want to deploy. Again, going back to that zero trust principle and having minimum number of users, having exposure to the actual key share or the key shards. So going back to that core security principles from day one, with the beauty of MPC tech, giving that flexibility, gives us that balance of accessibility and the security here. So
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. And we kind of talked about this before we started the official recording, but kind of feels like we're somewhere near the end of winter. We're somewhere in spring. Maybe it's the beginning of the spring, maybe it's the end of the spring and summer starting, but things are starting to thaw. it feels like when the summer's really on, no one has time to innovate in security. It just gets kind of crazy, and security just kind of keeping up what's happening. So if we've got another 6 to 12 months before kind of things get crazy again, and hopefully they do, what do you think are the innovations we should look for in security and changes you'd like to see either individuals or organizations make as we set our feet for the next, resurgence of the crypto, whatever form it takes?
Yeah, yeah, totally. Um, this goes back to beyond security, actually, as an industry in crypto. Um, because crypto winter is actually a boon for us right now as we innovate new cutting edge technology as part of our product portfolio, not just in the wallet space but also in the other ecosystem of the crypto world. um, as we gear up for the next big wave of the crypto summer, like the ETFs of the world or the Web3 adoption growth with tokenomics and a lot of tokens, and also with the stable coins that are very much in traction right now across the globe. There are different trends that we are actually looking at and trying to see what's the balance, both from a protocol perspective at the protocol layer with the zero knowledge proofs, in the L1, L2 layers when we are having the actual asset and token being developed, and also all the way up the chain at the wallet level, what all different ways that we can give new accessibility to the ease of use, and going back to that accessibility to the customers, QR codes and near field communications, having that wallet connect open source protocol for the accessing a hardware wallet to the DeFi ecosystem, and all of that is existing tech, but there is a lot more innovation around ease of use that is happening in the industry right now, giving that parity between the physical credit card that you might use with the NFC tech, having a key share in a credit card, and so on. So there are a lot of new innovative ideas coming up right now. And I'm personally super excited as we see the industry moving to the ETFs that you mentioned, and also to the other, Web3 tokens that would see a lot of traction in the near future. So yeah, I'm looking
I
forward to the new stuff.
Me too. I am very much looking forward to the future here. I do love these periods where I feel like as much of the technology advances in the winters, even more so than it does in the summers. And I'm excited to see what the next generation of this technology looks like as it makes its way, as you mentioned, into the mainstream, into credit cards, into ETFs and financial institutions. The good news is with crypto, as we all know, the roadmap has already been laid out with the existing TradFi systems. All we need to do as a crypto community is start to build in infrastructure that starts to match, get to parity, and then become better than all of the existing infrastructure that we know and are very familiar with. And I think with that, it probably brings us to a great closing place. So, Jaya, I really appreciate you joining us and sharing all the insights you have on wallets, crypto security, and generally how to keep yourself safe online.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for having me here, Sai. I'm super excited about wallets in general and also, the broader ecosystem. And can't wait to talk more in, as part of this podcast and also in future sessions too.
Absolutely. As new security issues pop up, we'll definitely have to have you on again. And thanks everyone for joining us as this concludes another episode of the Crypto Guardians podcast. This is a great reminder to prepare now, do an inventory of your systems before life gets crazy again and the crypto world heats up. This is the time to kind of secure things, batten down the hatches, and make sure that your assets are secure as we go into the next bull run. And so with that, I'll see y'all next time. Thanks for joining us.
Yep. Thank you, Sai.